If your business employs 50 or more full-time or full-time equivalent employees, it is likely that you will be required to submit the forms 1095-C and 1094-C to be in compliance with the Affordable Care Act. In this lesson, we will walk you through the process of preparing these forms, and you will learn about the different options you have to submit them to the IRS and your employees at the end of the year. There are a few steps you should take before printing or submitting your 1095 and 1094 forms. First, review the year-end software update notice and install the year-end update. At the end of each year, Sage provides an update that includes changes to the software to accommodate any new reporting requirements for year-end. Next, you'll want to make sure you're up to speed on the reporting requirements for the Affordable Care Act. This is to ensure you prepare and submit the correct forms and insurance to the IRS and your employees. One of the factors that will help you determine which Affordable Care Act forms you will be required to submit and what information needs to be included on them is to determine the number of full-time and full-time equivalent employees at your company. Use the ACA reports in payroll to determine these counts. And once you know what your full-time and full-time equivalent accounts are and which forms you will be required to submit, you will want to make sure that you're tracking the appropriate information in payroll so that when you're ready to prepare the forms, all the necessary information will be included. This chart provides at a glance the Affordable Care Act forms and information that must be provided to the employees and to the IRS at the end of the year. In this lesson, we'll walk through the process of preparing and submitting the 1095-C and 1094-C forms, which is required if you are an applicable large employer or one who employs 50 or more full-time or full-time equivalent employees. Employers who do not offer a self-insured health plan are only required to complete Parts 1 and 2 on the 1095-C form, while employers who do offer a self-insured health care plan are required to complete all 3 parts of the form. For the purposes of this lesson, we'll be showing the steps to complete all sections of these forms, and we will make sure to point out the differences in the steps to complete them based on the type of health care plan your company offers to your employees. Let's go ahead and get started. In the Payroll menu, select Federal and State Tax Filing. Then select Federal Forms. Select the 1095/1094-C form in the list. A description of the form displays to the right, and all that you need to do to get started is to confirm that the correct year is selected here, and then click Run Report. You may receive a message to complete an update to your Atrix forms. This is a normal process, as our integration with Atrix always guarantees you have the latest forms and information. Click Automatic Update, then click Next, and once the update is finished, click Close. And the ACA Setup Wizard opens. This will guide you through the preliminary steps. In the first step, you will need to decide what you want to do. Your options are to test drive with just the first 25 employees, or test drive with all employees, or process the actual 1095 and 1094 forms. If you're here to simply test this out, use one of the test drive options, as it doesn't save any of the data, just allows you to try the feature out. If you're ready to prepare the official forms, select No Thanks, Start Processing My 1095, 1094s. And then click Next. In the next step, confirm that the Federal Employer Identification Number for your company has pre-filled correctly. Then click Next. Your company information in the upper portion of this window should be included automatically, but you will need to make sure that all fields are correct and make any changes if necessary. And in the lower portion of the window, enter the contact information for the person who is completing the ACA forms. The company and contact information entered here will be reported in boxes 1 through 8 in Part 1 on the 1094-C form. When you're done, click Next to continue. Select the appropriate tax preparer type, and then click Next. If you are a designated government entity and need to complete boxes 9 through 16 in Part 1 of the 1094-C form, select this option. Otherwise, select I'm filing for my company/employer, and then click Next. In the Employee and Covered Individual Social Security Numbers window, you will need to indicate how you would like the Social Security numbers for employees and their covered individuals to be displayed on the printed copies sent to the employees. For employees, you have the option to show the full Social Security number or truncate it using asterisks or X's to show only the last 4 digits. If you select to truncate the employee's Social Security number, the same choice will be automatically selected for the covered individuals below. While preparing the forms, the full Social Security number will be displayed on the screen, but when the actual copies of the forms for the employees print, the options selected here determine how the Social Security numbers will display. Once you have selected the options you would like to use, click Next. If you track payroll data for a single EIN in multiple master files, the system has the ability to combine them in this process so that all your 1095 and 1094B information can be compiled in a single session. In this example, all the payroll data is stored in a single file, so we'll select No. I use a single payroll data file for this EIN, and then click Next. And this starts the transfer of data from your program into the forms. In the 1095, 1094C Preparer window opens. This will guide you through the remaining steps to prepare and submit your tax forms. Before you start, take a moment to get familiar with the Preparer window. At the top of the window, you will see a status bar and lets you know what step in the process you are on, and the instructions tell you what information you should be reviewing during that step. For example, this is step 1 of 5, and the instructions say, Verify employee information. When you've completed a step, you can use the Next button at the top to move on to the next step. Or, if you ever need to go back to a previous step, you can use the Previous button. On the right is a side panel, and that contains some helpful information. At the top of the panel, you will see tips that you can read through. The tips displayed here provide helpful information regarding the use of the Preparer window and information that must be provided to ensure your forms are complete and accurate. You can toggle between the different tips using the forward and back buttons here. And if you would like to read more about any of the tips displayed here, you can click the More Information link. There is also a general help option available, which you can access by clicking the Help button here. When you click it, a website will open in your internet browser, and here you can use the links below or the search box to find the information you need to continue processing your forms. Another area in the sidebar to keep an eye on is the lower portion, where the preparer displays any errors encountered as you're working in the window. If any errors are detected, this section includes information about the errors and what you need to do to fix them. You cannot proceed to the next step until the errors have been resolved. The fields that the errors pertain to also appear in red in the main area of the window. We'll look at how to review and correct these errors in just a moment. If at any time you would like to shrink or hide the sidebar, you can do so by clicking the arrow button here. Now let's talk about the information that is displayed in the main area of this window and start the process of completing Step 1. In Step 1, there are questions listed on the left side in the ALE Member Information section that you must provide answers to before you can proceed. The information you enter here will be used to complete the 1094-C form. There is a lot of help available in this window. If you're not sure how to answer a question or would like to know more about what is being asked, you can hover your mouse over any of the hyperlinks in this window. And a tooltip appears, providing you with a description, and for even more details, click the More Information link. and a website appears in your internet browser that contains even more information. Okay, let's get started. The first question you are required to answer is whether your company offers self-insured coverage or not. If your company is not self-insured, answer no, but if it is, answer yes. If you answer yes to this question, you'll be required to complete Part 3 of the 1095-C forms. If you answer no, you're only required to complete Parts 1 and 2. The preparer will use this answer to this question to guide you through the process of completing the appropriate information for your 1095-C forms. In this example, we'll select yes. The system uses the information from your payroll software to determine the answer to the next two questions for you. In this database, there are no employees with foreign addresses, so no is automatically selected, and the value in the total number of forms submitted with this transmittal is also being automatically calculated and filled in. Next, you must indicate if this is an authoritative transmittal for this EIN. This is used on line 19 in Part 1 of the 1094-C form. In this case it is, so answer yes. And notice that by answering yes to that question, the preparer has recognized that there is now additional information that must be provided for the 1094-C form to be complete. So there's some additional questions to be answered and fields that are required, each of which is highlighted in red. The next question you're required to answer is whether or not all employees for this EIN are included in this submission. If so, select yes. And the total number of forms filed by and/or on behalf of the EIN ALE member is provided automatically. If you were to answer no to this question, you would need to enter the total number of forms manually. The last question you must answer in the ALE member information section is whether or not you're a member of an aggregate ALE group. This is reported on line 21 in Part 2 of the 1094-C form. If you answer yes to this question, you'll be required to enter information about other ALE members using this button. But if you're not a member of an aggregate ALE group, select no, and then no additional information is required. If any of the certifications of eligibility reported on line 22 in Part B of your 1094-C apply to your company, select the appropriate checkboxes here. If not, leave them blank. The last bit of information that is required to complete Step 1 is in the ALE Member Information Monthly section. The information you enter here is reported in Part 3 of the 1094-C form. The information has pre-filled from the data within your software. If you need to make changes, you can do so. You can verify the information that has pre-filled by using the information off of the 54331 ACA Employee Count Reconciliation Report. Compare the numbers. If they're correct, you can go ahead and click Next. If you need to make changes, make the changes, and then click Next. And you're now into Step 2 of 5, and you've likely noticed the information displayed in the preparer has changed quite a bit. For the remaining steps in the preparer, you'll be reviewing the information for each employee. All of your employees will be listed in rows in the employee information grid, and their corresponding plan information displayed in the grid on the right side. When an employee is selected in one of the rows in the grids at the top, all the information for that employee is also displayed in the lower portion of the window. The lower portion of the window is broken up into two tabs, with the information for the employee on the Employee Entry tab, and on the Covered Individuals tab, this information lists any covered individuals that is used to complete Part 3 of the 1095-C forms. Companies that offer employer-sponsored self-insured healthcare plans will see information here. The preparer will guide you through the process of reviewing all the information that will be reported on the forms, so it's best to focus on just the information that is highlighted in yellow during each step so you don't miss anything. To move between employees, you can click anywhere on the row for the employee you want to view, or you can move from one employee to the next using the forward or backward buttons in the lower portion of the window. Just like you saw in the previous step, any mistakes or missing required information is detected and will be displayed in the errors on the right. You can click on any error in the list, and it works like a hyperlink, taking you to the employee or the field that the error was detected in. In this case, an employee is missing a zip code, so in order to continue, the zip code must be entered. Errors can be corrected in the employee information grid or in the lower portion of the window. Any corrections you make here in the 1095 and 1094C preparer window does not update the information in payroll. So in most cases, it's best to close out of the preparer and fix the information in your payroll software rather than making changes here. If you do make changes here, anywhere inside the preparer window, make sure to remember to update the information in payroll when you're done. Once you've reviewed the information for each employee and all errors have been corrected, click Next to move to step number 3. And you're now in step 3 of 5. And you've probably noticed that the preparer window has changed again. If your company is an applicable large employer providing self-insured coverage to employees, you'll be required to complete Part 3 on the 1095C forms for each employee. If you answered no to the "Does this employer provide self-insurance coverage?" in question step 1, step 3 is not required, and you can click Next to skip it and move to step 4. If you answered yes, that your company does provide self-insurance coverage, you will need to confirm that each employee has enrolled in a plan, as the employer-sponsored self-insurance checkbox selected. Notice that the Covered Individuals tab for the employee is now displayed automatically in the lower portion of the window. The first, and in some cases only, covered individual listed is the employee. For each month in which they are covered by an employer-sponsored self-insured healthcare plan, a check mark is placed in the month columns to the right. If they were covered for an entire year, a single check mark in the All column is all that is required. For employees who have additional covered individuals entered, the first covered individual listed is the employee, and any additional covered individuals and the information entered for them will be displayed below. As you review the information for each employee, you'll want to confirm the information in the month selected for each individual is correct. If you have any errors, please correct those before you're able to click Next. When you're ready to move forward, click the Next button. And we move to step 4 in the preparer, where you can verify employee electronic delivery information. If any of your employees have opted to receive an electronic copy of their 1095C form, select the Electronic Only checkbox and confirm the correct email address is displayed. If it's not, you can enter it here. This option should only be selected for employees who have opted to receive an electronic copy instead of a printed copy of their 1095C form. Once you complete all the steps in the 1095-1094C preparer, you'll be prompted to choose how you want to submit your 1095 and 1094C forms to employees and the IRS. If you choose the complete e-filing service, each employee that is selected as electronic only will receive an electronic copy of this form and will not receive a paper copy. There is a significant cost savings in the complete e-filing service package for employees who receive their forms electronically. More on that in a moment. There is an electronic 1095 consent form available in your Federal Forms window that you can print and provide to any of your employees that would like to receive electronic copies of the 1095. They can complete it and return it to you. When you're ready, click Next. In step 5, you'll be reviewing the coverage information for each employee. Notice that the focus has shifted to the plan information in the grid at the top. You can review the coverage information for each employee in the grid at the top or at the bottom of the window. This information is filled in automatically based on what you have tracked for each employee for each month in payroll. If there's no information, you can fill it in here in the top grid or in the bottom grid. If you need to make changes, you can also make changes either in the top grid or in the bottom employee grid. Once you've confirmed the correct information is entered for each employee, click Next. In this window, you must indicate how you would like to submit the 1095, 1094-C forms to the IRS and your employees. The complete e-filing service includes printing and mailing the physical copies of the forms to the employees or providing the electronic copies to those who have opted to receive their forms in electronic format, as well as electronic filing of the forms 1095 and 1094-C with the IRS. If you prefer to print and mail these forms on your own, or would like to choose a combination of printed and e-file forms, select Other Options and indicate which forms you'd like to print versus those you would like to e-file. For example, if you'd like to print and mail the copies on your own, select Print My Employee 1095-Cs, clear the option for e-filing, and then select Print Federal Copy 1095-Cs and 1094-Cs. If you'd like to know more information about the process of e-filing, click the More Info link near the top of the window. In this example, the options to print the forms are selected, and let's click Next to start that process. One more window appears explaining the benefits of the complete ACA eFile service. If you've changed your mind, you can select Yes here. If not, click Next. The last step before you start the process of printing the forms is to review this list. Confirm that all the appropriate forms will be printed. The list displays all forms and how they will be processed in the Forms viewer. Make sure you review the action list for accuracy. And you can also print a copy of the action list for your records by clicking the Print button. To start printing the forms, click Next. The Forms Viewer window opens and displays the first copy that it will print. In this case, it's the federal copy of the 1094-C form. The Forms Viewer works in the same manner as any other tax form created in payroll under the Federal Forms window. You can see how many pages will print and scroll between them using the buttons in the top left. The wording in the report steps tells you what to do, and up at the top it will show you how many reports you have to print and which one you're currently working on. When you're ready to print the form, click Print Final. Some tax forms require specialized paper, and others should be printed on standard printer paper. Each time you click Print Final, a warning appears letting you know which type of paper to use for the copy being printed. In this case, the copy should be printed on plain paper. Once you've confirmed the correct paper is loaded in your printer, click OK. And the Printer Options window appears, where you can change any printing preferences as necessary. When you're ready to print the form, click OK. And after confirming that it's printed properly, click Next Step. This moves us to the next report in the Forms viewer. In this case, it's the federal copies of the 1095-C forms. Notice that this one has several pages, a page for each employee. You can use the forward or back buttons in the top to move between pages if you wish to view each one. When you're ready, click Print Final. Verify you have the correct paper loaded into the printer and click OK. Check the printing preferences and click OK to start printing the forms. Confirm that all forms printed properly and click Next Step. And we move to the next report, the Employee 1095-C Notice. This is required to be included when 1095-C forms are mailed to employees. If you've ordered and are using specialized forms for employee copies of the 1095-C forms, this information may be already included on the back of them. If not, this step allows you to print a single copy of the notice. You can make copies, and then you can include these copies with the 1095-C forms that you'll be distributing to your employees. To print this notice, click Print Final. Make sure the correct paper is loaded into the printer and click OK. Verify your printing preferences and click OK to print. Then click Next Step to move to the next report. Report 4 is the Employer 1095-C. In other words, it's the record copies of the 1094-C forms for the employer. To print copies for your records, click Print Final. Check the paper and click OK. Verify your printing preferences and click OK. And click Next Step to move to the last report. Report 5 is the Employee 1095-C forms. These are the copies of the 1095-C that will need to be distributed to the employees. When you're ready to print the forms, click Print Final. Stop for a second and notice the paper warning that appears for this report. It's changed. These copies that are distributed to employees must meet certain requirements, and therefore we recommend you use specialized forms for this copy. Once the correct paper is loaded into the printer, click OK. Check your printing preferences and click OK to print the forms. And finally, click Next Step. You're almost done. And that's it, you're done. All the forms have been printed and should be waiting for you on the printer. This History File Options window appears, showing that the status of all the completed actions. It also provides you with some options on the right to reprint, to eFile, print incomplete forms, make corrections, or just start over. If you need to use any of these available options, select one and click Next. Otherwise, to exit the ACA Preparer, click the Close button. Now that you've completed this lesson, you should be able to complete the filings for your federal 1095-C and 1094-C forms.